male or female thing. I think that's an individual character
Right.
thing.
I
Folks who will take advantage, but we end up getting caught up in the whole. Well, women do this and men do that. No, I think good people do this and bad people do that.
Well,
I think it's more of that kind of thing.
you know, I also wanted to pick you guys' brains a little bit because there was a survey where they asked men, "Have you ever been sexually harassed?" And they said no, but they asked if they had been hazed in their workplace or on a team or in a frat, and they said yes. And in some of these reports of what they went through during hazing, especially a lot of the athletes had stories of when they were in the shower and guys would come around them like, "Oh, this one's pretty." Or in the military, they would make jokes about, going camping in the woods and all this stuff. Don't you guys count that to be sexually harassed? And, why is it kind of desensitized just because you're trying to be a part of an organization? Why do men have to kind of be more, I don't know. It just seems like when men go through things like that, it's almost like they kind of either make it something else or I don't know.
Amber, listen, I'm so glad you said that, B, because I just posted on Facebook right now. Is sexual harassment respected when a male is a victim?
Right.
Is the victim. Now, I'm cool with it now, but when I was younger, I was molested by a girl.
Wow.
Now, some would say because I'm a male and she's a female that, oh man, you didn't get molested. Some girl just
gave you play.
Gave you a little something, man. So
Wow.
suck it up.
Wow.
However, the emotional, psychological damage still occurs whether you are male or whether you are female. And so I think sometimes we look at men and we're supposed to suck it up and, hey, you're strong. You don't need to, whine or complain about something. You'll get over it. And the Me Too movement is geared towards women. However, men have struggled in this area as well. And I'm going to say it again. It's 2018 and women are very, very aggressive. And I'm talking about women are asking men to marry them today. Yeah. They're approaching men in a way and saying, "Hey, do you want to be with me?" and stuff like that. And so, my whole thing is, and BZ and Thin Bad, is that we must respect women. However, I believe men deserve to have a voice in this movement as well.
I agree. And I really think that that's why it was so important that Terry Crews came forward, because I think before, Terry Crews came forward with his story about how when he was at a party with the Hollywood elites, he was touched inappropriately. I think before he came out with that, a lot of people were caught up in this whole Me Too movement being about women and solely women. I mean, if you Google image Me Too movement, the logo is pink. So I mean, yes, it was probably geared towards women, started by women, but men go through it just as well. And honestly, as much as being a woman does kind of make me more geared towards speaking up for what women go through, I really do feel for the men, because I feel like when men come forward with stories about sexual harassment, they're probably looked at more crazy than when women do it.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you on that. And I want to talk about, and I know you're going to share with us some questions, and BZ, but I want to talk about this in my workplace because I'm a pastor.
Let's do it.
And we deal with things in the church context, and some things are publicized and some things are not. And so when we get to that issue, I do want to share how it happens.
Yes.
And it's not just coming from the pews or the chairs, but you have leadership and you have individuals who operate in this type of disrespect, and they use their power as leverage to try to manipulate people into doing what they desire for them to do. And so it's not just in Hollywood. It is in areas of faith. It is in areas of employment. And so with the Me Too movement, it allows individuals a voice. You know, you were talking about Terry Crews. What actually happened there, Amber? Did he come out and say something?
He did. So he came out and said that when he was at a party that, you know, so a lot of times in Hollywood, when there's a major movie that wraps, or when a production company is trying to celebrate a milestone or anything like that, there are huge Hollywood parties where most of the elites, if you will, like A-list celebrities, producers, directors, things attend. So Terry Crews was there with his wife, and there was one of these executives that, you know, was kind of joking around with him and grabbed his junk and walked away. But when he did it, it was like in front of people. It was in the middle of a party, like, and he was just kind of stuck on it, like, what do I even do about that? Like, is that, I guess the guy thought it was a joke, but he obviously felt violated, and he never really said anything about it because he thought that nobody would take him seriously. Mm-hmm. So that's basically what happened. But, you know, since we're on the subject of the workplace, I kind of want to go there. Like, you guys have both had leadership positions in your careers. So how have you dealt with workplace allegations of sexual harassment? You know, you don't have to put names out there or say when or where, but like if you've ever been involved in a situation like that, how do you handle it?
Been bad?
Yeah, you know, in the situations that I've been, and Pastor C, you'll know this too. Having grown up in a church with my father, who was a pastor, I used to watch him. You know, after he would finish preaching, he would go to the door through the narthex and, you know, greet folks on the way out. And every woman who would come by would put a cheek up there, and kiss a cheek, and give him a, you know, holy hug, and going out the door, and you know, it was not a question that, you know, you're talking 30, 40 years ago. Right. It was not a question of anything, no matter who they were, how they looked, everybody. He said, you better give everyone a kiss on the cheek, because if you picked and choose, then you had problems. But he gave everybody, you know, as you say, you know, 8 to 80, blind, triple crazy, it doesn't matter. Everybody who came through that church door, a woman, he greeted that way. And so I grew up learning or seeing that and think that's the way that you greet a woman. So fast forward 25, 30 years from that point, when I got into the legislature and went to the Capitol in Indianapolis, and, you know, I was greeting politicians, you know, women politicians who were coming from, you know, the same area of the town that I was, and I reached in and went to hug and give a kiss on the cheek, and I felt her bristle, and I backed up. And that was the first time I had felt that. So a part of it is kind of recognizing what's going on, that what's normal to you may not be normal to everybody else. So you just go ahead and assume that up front, that everybody's not going to take to that. Everybody's past experiences aren't the same. So that may be a trigger for some folks. Right. So in the workplace, for me, one of the things I was very careful, you know, if I was meeting with a woman at the time, and, you know, I'm thinking to myself as I'm talking now, how sexist I'm sounding in saying that if I were meeting with a woman, I would make sure that I did not meet by myself or with a closed door without someone else in there with me.
Yes.
But you know, that someone would always be there, because so that you never get into this whole he said, she said kind of thing. Right. That you have a witness and you have another party. But, you know, you need to do that nowadays, no matter who's in the room. You know, whether it's male or female, now it's a whole new. So as I said, you know, I realized that I was setting myself up even in that way. Yeah. Now by not having someone in there all the time, or having a meeting with the door open, but sometimes you can't do that. You're dealing with sensitive situations, HR, human relations situations. You can't always have an open door kind of thing, but to kind of be in public as much as you can. When you go take someone to lunch, don't just take one person all the time, or
Absolutely.
if you take one person, make sure you take everybody else.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think those are the kind of things that help me kind of stay on the up and up, and just consistency and integrity in that vein.
Definitely.
Is gonna, and thank goodness, I had not been, charged or anything like that, or
accused,
or any of that
allegations,
stuff.
anything.
Yeah, no allegations, none of that stuff. So thanks be to God. When I listen at what's going on, now, thank God there were no cell phones and cameras, all of that stuff. But you imagine if all of the stuff that had happened, I wonder if the people who we think of as heroes from way back would still be heroes if they had smartphones.
Listen,
Man.
if walls could talk, honey, if walls could talk.
Right.
Well, I'm a pastor, and I've been pastoring for about 10 years now, and I learned a lot, and I don't take meetings with females with the door closed. And I do understand people want to be discreet and they want their privacy, but it's just not wisdom. And so I wouldn't do that. And I teach our leaders to do the same thing. And I also have accountability around me. I don't meet with women in the office and no one else is in the building. Because if something was to be presented as an allegation or whatever, it would be my word against hers. And so those are the protective measures that I use. Now, in today's culture, you have to use wisdom even in meeting with men. And so if it's not something that is too private, I would have someone there as an accountability. I write notes and I take notes and things of that nature. Now, have I ever experienced that? Me per se, I was single for about 4 years. And so, everybody in the church who's single is praying for a husband. They try to
shoot their shot.
Yeah, and so people try to shoot their shot or whatever. And some may call what I experienced sexual harassment, but I didn't take it that way. I've never harassed anybody. I don't play those games. However, I have had to deal with or mediate some situations in the church context whereby a woman was or someone accused another of sexual harassment, and I brought both parties in and we talked about it. And there was one case where I literally had to ask the male to leave the church and not come back. He was that disrespectful. And then in some cases, if the allegations are very egregious, then I would have to notify the authorities because of my position as clergy or senior clergy in that matter. It is a very sensitive subject. It is a very sensitive situation, and that is why I wouldn't want anybody to play with something like that.
Exactly.
Because when you accuse somebody of sexual indiscretions, do you know that you have to report yourself to the authorities, and people have to know where you live and stuff like that? And it's
crazy.
It
it's
messes.
invasive.
Yes, it really does. And it messes with somebody's image, their character, their future. And so me as a pastor, not only do I use wisdom, but I pray and I want to be led by the Holy Spirit when you are adjudicating in these matters. However, I think that it is important to get the truth and find out if someone is fabricating or not, because
Absolutely.
you do not want to move prematurely and damage someone's character. And so this subject touches home for me, Ambezi and Thin Bad, because I've seen it. I've seen it. I've been a victim of it, in my youth or whatever. And so when people come out and begin to share, I hope that healing is happening. But for those who are just lying and fabricating, I pray that they shut up and be quiet, because you don't want to damage somebody to the point where they cannot be productive in society.
All right. Well, I definitely have some things to say about that, but this has been a great discussion so far, and we've covered a great deal. So after the break, let's talk about why it takes people so long to report harassment, what you should do if you feel harassed, and let's also talk about if more men will be inspired